HealingYourself.Life provides information for awareness, educational, and support purposes only and does not diagnose or prescribe treatment for any medical condition. Viewers are encouraged to do their own due diligence and consult with their own medical caregivers before making personal treatment decisions.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We're here, and Healing Yourself Life viewers, we're here with Tom Lacovara-Stewart. He is the founder of RTR Truth Media. I'm your host, Dunagun Kaiser.
And I'm Melody Kaiser.
And we are married Lyme survivors, and so is Tom. And we're here today to ask Tom to talk with us about the controversial origins of modern Lyme disease. Tom, thanks for joining us here on HealingYourself.Life and Reluctant Preppers.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be back with you guys again. I love watching your videos. They come into my feed every time you publish. I really enjoy that.
We've got kind of a rare cachet here. Three Lyme survivors on the same call and panel here.
Yeah.
Yep.
But one of the things that is so distressing for a lot of people whose lives have been impacted by Lyme disease, as ours have, I would say that for both of us, for Melody and myself, the origin of our Lyme is controversial. First of all, she caught it from me. Lyme is a spirochete like syphilis, and they don't tell you generally that you can catch it from your spouse.
I don't think the CDC recognizes that.
They don't officially recognize that. So that's one thing. But my catching of Lyme is, again, we hear various stories. Some people say that Lyme has always been with the human race, at least for tens of thousands of years. They say that they found some Paleolithic man and frozen in the ice, and he had evidence of Lyme disease and inflammation in his joint and that sort of thing. But over the past couple of decades, we've been hearing about just a huge hockey stick of increase, not only of the spread of Lyme. Dr. Ernie Murakami from British Columbia talks about it as the new epidemic, but also the virulence and the seriousness and how it mimics many other chronic diseases like MS and so on. So there are some pretty serious concerns about where modern Lyme, and as they say, it's not your grandfather's Lyme disease. So could you talk to us about what controversy is swirling around the origins of modern Lyme disease and why that's important?
Well, the U.S. government has not just the U.S. government, the German government, Soviet government. There's so many declassified projects that they've been exposed at being involved in, and this is just one of those areas that I think has where there's some smoke, there's some fire. I grew up in New Jersey, traveling back and forth between New Jersey and Vermont when I was a child, and Connecticut was, not far. We're right in that area. So I remember getting the bullseye. Excuse me. I remember getting the bullseye rash, and I remember my grandmother putting some old Sicilian black salve on it or some kind of, we didn't know what it was. I was probably 9 or 10 years old, somewhere around there, I think. I can't remember. I was a young boy. By the time I got into high school, my latter years of high school, I was starting to have some problems. Pain-wise, cognitive. Now, I come from a family, all of us, every one of us in our family have a pretty high intelligence, and it was very frustrating for me when I started going to college and taking criminal law, that when I started taking exams, I would go blank. Now, if I sat in my professor's office and we had a conversation, he would at the end of the conversation, he's like, I don't understand why you're having such a problem on the test, or do you have anxiety? I was like, no, I'm not nervous at all. When I sit down at the test, I go blank and I can't recall. But when I'm in a free-flowing conversation, it's a little easier. Now, this is the beginning stages of this, right? So he said, well, I can't grade you on a conversation. I said, well, the shame of it is that that's part of the problem with our education system, If you know that I know the material, then, that should be...
If you've demonstrated mastery.
Right,
exactly. I could go off on a rabbit hole for the education system. But,
exactly.
Another time.
But it wasn't working out. So I left college. I went to fire academy, and I started taking crash rescue, vehicle extrication, rooftop operations, smoke divers, all that. right around the time of 9/11. Of course, this was going back some time. I really feel old now, but and then I started having problems with pain in the fire department, and it just the pain just kept steadily getting worse and worse and worse. And I was going to doctors, and there had been a couple things that had happened. I rammed a door in with my shoulder on one of our calls, and I was in an accident. There was a couple, scrapes that I thought maybe this has some, but it was more arthritic. It wasn't just my injury site. It was much more than that, and it was becoming worse and worse to the point where I was lethargic, couldn't get up out of bed. So my doctor started prescribing me opiate painkillers. And the opiate painkillers, it worked for a little while, but when we started talking about what the real problem was, I think he suspected that there was something going on. But I remember one of the doctors I went to also saying, I can't treat you for this. You have fibromyalgia. That's what you have. So they went the fibromyalgia route, which is a made-up concoction of a term that covers so many symptoms, which is really convenient when they're trying to suppress information. Now, the reason that I think that this is a government thing, and I'm not so conspiratorial to say that the government infected the people intentionally and they're hiding it. It's not what I'm really. I don't know. I don't like saying things I can't prove. What I can prove is that Plum Island facility, they were doing some really crazy stuff there. And if you just research the open source history of who was involved with that, and you look at what Ernest Traub was involved with, biological tick-borne, stuff. So it's not a real big leap after talking with a few people that used to work on the island that said that what they were doing with their animals, they weren't keeping their animals properly. They had animals that they were testing different things on that were in the open on the island. Well, deer can swim. This is a lot of people don't realize this. Deer can swim from the island to the shore. I mean, it's not something that you see every day, but it can happen. Then you have the birds. And so this is a real problem. You're not talking about animals in a facility with the roof that's hermetically sealed or anything like that. You're talking about something they're not being careful enough with. And I think I don't know whether it was a lack of foresight. I don't automatically go to the government did it intentionally. That may be, though. I mean, we did just kick the crap out of the Germans, and we had a German that was kind of heading up the program. He might have felt some kind of way about that. I don't know. But sticking with what we know, the outbreak broke out in that little tiny area in Lyme, Connecticut, and it exploded slowly. Like if you look at the map of the reported cases, and you do that with a red circle, and you do it over the course of time, it was like a slow and silent bomb that dropped on the Northeast, and now it's everywhere. So so a lot of people say there's evidence of this being existing. Well, of course there's evidence of it existing. They take these things and they weaponize them. They take them. Where do they get them from? They get them from nature. And this is, so no, humans didn't just concoct viruses one day. They've always existed. It's what we do with them and what we allow governments, more importantly, what we're trusting in governments. How many times can you recall in your lifetime that the government's lied to you? and we trust these, I'm trying to put it nice without, cussing them, but it's like,
and it's always 20 years later that it comes out that they covered up this or they did that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And what we're finding out now, I just did a report on President Truman. His 2 months ago, President Truman's documents, his CIA daily summary reports were released. And I started tearing through them, and I'm like, oh my God, so many of the things that he said were absolute propaganda to the public. He knew he had intelligence about things that he was purporting one thing to the public and clear evidence of other things going on and other agendas going on. So, this is government, man. This is, I love the founding fathers. I love a lot of the principles that we were founded on.
But man, I hate the government. I love my country, but I hate my government. And another part of the problem is that they also, like I said, with the doctors, they didn't want to treat for it because the federal government was actually threatening through the American Medical Association to take doctors' licenses away. I remember attending a hearing. Yeah. I was sitting there, it's like, this guy's only treating people with antibiotics, for Pete's sake. Like, what's the harm or foul? So when the government reacts in a way that suppresses doctors from being able to try and treat people,
right, exactly,
that to me is the smoking gun. I think why would you do that?
Yeah, Dr. Murakami, he lost his license.
Yeah, we have a video called "Investigate Lyme and Lose Your License" if people want to look that up on HealingYourself.Life.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's crazy.
It's insane.
Not to help people, or there's other people who have suffered with Lyme who will say, they were told they were crazy. It's all in your head. When you can't get out of bed in the morning, or you feel so depressed, or you don't feel energy. For me, it was severe neck pain that wasn't going away, and finally getting the diagnosis. It's terrible how much and how many years people have suffered, and and doctors aren't helping them, and it's like, wow. And to think, I don't know, I'm not trying to be conspiracy either, but how many doctors might know and aren't treating, or I don't know that. I don't know, but
there's significant pressure on doctors, peer reviews and so on, to suppress even the recognition of what's called chronic Lyme, because the official CDC doctrine says that if it's caught early and you get a 10 to 30 day round of doxycycline or one of those tetracycline type antibiotics, then you're good, you're done. And anything after that is you're making it up or you're blaming it. But even the CDC comes out on the side and admits that the actual number of suspected cases is easily 10 times the official number. So last year the official number was 40,000 new cases. They think it's probably closer to 400,000 new cases, and that's what they're admitting. Besides the fact that the disease itself now not just being like arthritic swollen joints, like they said, Dr. I'm trying to think of his name, a German doctor, I'll think of it in a minute, but he was saying that in the Black Forest region of Germany, that for centuries there's been this about people having knobby knees and knobby wrists and that sort of thing, as though it's endemic there. But he said, but this new form, which can masquerade as MS or fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome, he says, like whack-a-mole. Every time you think you've treated it, it sprouts up somewhere else and it moves from body part to body part. And when you mentioned getting a slight injury from trauma, doing your job as a fire rescue person, how it takes over the immune system and co-ops when there's reconstruction happening. It makes sure that it gets built into the new foundation, so it's in on the ground floor of any healing or inflammation or activity of the immune system in your body. So could you take us further down that path of the slow motion bomb that happened starting from Lyme, Connecticut, and spreading? What do we know now that we didn't know then, and that's still not being admitted by the authorities?
Well, I've spoken to so many people, good people. One fellow was a park ranger, a couple cops, and it's not just us normal folk. It's people that work for the government too that are affected by it. So, I think it's gotten to the point now where it's grown so large and so bad that you have now people among their own that are starting to put pressure. I'm expecting this to really come to a head a lot quicker. I think that there's going to be more information coming soon. Now, I've spoken to people that I really can't refer to yet, and I don't like doing that kind of stuff, like baiting you guys. But I've spoken to some people that are pretty high up in the medical establishment, and they know that this is a problem, and they too have their suspicions, but can't prove exactly. See, that's the problem, is culpability here. They have literally kicked this can down the road so far that many of the people that were involved at Plum Island and were in the know are starting now to die off. Now, I think that as that happens, just like with every other thing in our history, 20, 30 years later, finally we find out. I mean, the CIA was dropping, what were they dropping in the subway system with the light bulbs? I mean, the San Francisco got sprayed from. I mean,
Yeah,
so we know
Minneapolis
about
had
all
Agent
these
Orange,
things
yeah.
now.
Yes.
Yeah, we know.
Yes.
And so we find out 30, 40 years later, and then it's a little apology, but I think that the real point now is that
Well, they tell you there was no harm done when it was St. Paul, Minneapolis area.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it was copper or something like they did. You thought it was Agent Orange, but whatever it was, like, well, there was no harm done to anybody living there. It's like, well, how do you know that? Really, how do you know? How do you know?
And like they would tell you
Right, exactly. So
that's one of the concerns that we have when you talk about this slow-rolling denial. If the motivation for the slow-rolling denial is lack of accountability, the outcome of it is just crippling wreckage on many, many, many tens or hundreds of thousands of people's lives destroyed just because of the denial and the lack of ability for people to treat this effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you remember what Bill Gates said about vaccines. If vaccines work really, really good, we can expect to reduce the population by, whoa, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. Let's think about that for a moment. Mm-hmm. I thought vaccines were supposed to make you healthy. Being healthy elongates your life.
Right.
How would that reduce? I mean, these people that are behind this stuff, I don't trust any of them further than I can throw them. And I certainly, I've gotten to the point now where if the government tells me the sky is blue, I'm just going to assume that it's gray. I don't believe anything they tell me anymore. And it's a shame. It's a real shame because this has caused a big problem just in public confidence. I don't respect anything that they do on the federal level these days. And it's just, well, you look at this thing with Lyme disease here. I mean, this was literally a biological time bomb that had Nazi fingerprints to it, right? And we have a government that takes an Operation Paperclip thousands of these scientists and absorbs them and gives them their own programs. Like, not only are we going to bring you into our country after we kick the crap out of you, let's forget about all the other stuff with the Nazis, the evil and all that. Forget all that. We just kicked the crap out of your country and bombed it back into the Stone Age. Come on over and have special weapons programs to, among the American people. What are they, nuts? Mm-hmm. It frustrates me. I have a lot of people that I know that I should have gone a lot further. There were years that I descended into, quite honestly, into absolute despair, addiction. Mm-hmm. All of the other members of my family who didn't get ill did fine. And I had members of my own family calling me, all kinds of names because there's nothing wrong with you. You look fine. Oh, I love that one.
Yeah,
I
right,
look
exactly.
fine. I wish
you
I
look
I
really
felt
good.
as good.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
you just don't
okay.
want to apply yourself. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It got to the point where I put my feet on the ground and just tears would roll down my face.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I had anger issues because I was so frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole gambit. How many people have you heard these stories from?
Right.
So I wish I had the answer, but when it comes to what the government's done, they're going to keep stonewalling like they did with Tuskegee, like they did with so many other experiments that it took us forever to find out. Mm-hmm. At some point the American people need to wake up. They need to, I probably can't say it on YouTube, and prepare, which is, I love the name of your program because people need to prepare because this is not going to get better. I don't think this whole draining the swamp thing is happening.
Yeah.
At least it's not happening fast enough for me.
Right. Yeah, some things take longer. It's hard to know at this point whether he's going to be successful or kicked out. They'll find a way. They're trying anyway. And it is very frustrating. I think you had on your channel, Dunagun, somebody say you're just being lazy. I don't think that,
when I lost 20% of my muscle mass and 40% of my strength and couldn't even do yard work anymore, and they said, you're not sick, you're lazy. Yeah.
Morons.
Yeah, it's really, when you're not, I can understand sometimes when you're not in that situation, and you're right, you don't look ill. Somebody who has cancer, sometimes their hair is falling out because they're doing chemo or whatever. I have a friend who didn't go that route, and she's feeling fine, which is probably better than doing the chemo route. But just that people who don't have it sometimes don't have the capacity to understand or be empathetic to what's going on in your life. And I think that's where the Lyme survivors need to get together. We just talked to a woman who was just like, oh my gosh, just started just talking about all the symptoms she's been having. Because she says nobody else will listen. Nobody else, understands what I'm going through, and you guys do because you've been through it.
Yeah. Yes.
And you don't understand what it does to your marriage, and you don't. It's incredible the effects that this has on not only your relationships with children and your emotional health.
Family,
people don't understand.
Mother, father,
you might,
sisters.
You might not have the reserves. You might fly off the handle, and you don't mean to, but you just do, and you wonder, where did that come from? So it can be extremely difficult, and it's a long road. People then keep going, well, aren't you better yet? Why don't you just say you're fine? It's like, well, if you're not really better, you're not really better. I hate to say it, but you're not better. So
I've seen it destroy people's lives that had perfectly good families and kids and careers, and as they started to get sick, they just lost everything. I am on I'm trying something new, and I want to share this. I'm not selling this. This is something that I will if it works, but I've been hearing about this copper water.
Yeah. We did too.
New type of copper.
Somebody just sent me this. Yeah. And I got 6 bottles of it.
Wow.
And David Hingston is one of our political prisoners that I care for very much, and this was part of his effort to help the public. But it's copper, zinc, and calcium, and H2O concentrate.
Okay.
And basically you take like 1 drop in the morning and 1 drop at night. And it's supposed to help, and I'm not going to make any claims to have the FDA knock on my door, but it's supposed to help, anything from cancer to Lyme to all kinds of parasitic issues. Just a lot very similar to how colloidal silver works for certain kinds of infections, but it won't work for all of them. Well, supposedly this is supposed to help with the with Lyme disease too. So that's why they sent it to me, and I'm going to try it, and hopefully the next time that I sit down with you guys, I'll be able to give you a report on how that worked, and I'll stay in touch with you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Weekly, and let you know if there's any progress. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of things come across.
Of course.
That I've tried.
That's right. We have too, and that's the other thing that people don't understand is you sit there because you're desperate. You try all these different things, and it's money out the window sometimes. Sometimes some things are working better than others. We are going to try a peptide therapy that is FDA approved. So we'll tell you how that goes. But we've also heard of copper. The same guy who told us about the peptide is a special form of copper that's supposed to be really good. So we'll see when we get a hold of that.
I wanted to share.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Just, I've been trying to find a comment that was posted by one of our viewers about a week ago. Maria Perez said, "I've had Lyme for 11 years. I was only diagnosed 4 years ago after having gotten multiple false negative tests for Lyme. I was diagnosed with everything under the sun until I contacted canlyme.ca, and they told me which test to ask for, and they actually confirmed my Lyme before I ever had any blood work come back positive based on my symptoms. I had started my own business, had a great career, was a competitive synchronized swimmer before Lyme. Almost overnight, I developed kidney stones, pancreatitis, liver problems, autoimmune problems, gluten allergies, fainting spells, night sweats, emotional changes, debilitating fatigue and pain. I went from being unstoppable to crying as I forced myself out of bed and crawled away to the bathroom to try to get ready for work. I would constantly push my body beyond its limits to the point that I would literally pass out and be hospitalized because I was told that it was in my head and I just wasn't trying hard enough. This went on for years. Too tired to keep writing. Such is my life now with Lyme." So these are true life stories.
Heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking.
LymeDisease.org is a grassroots organization that we've joined, and they now have a database of 12,000 people called My Lyme Data, and it's people who keep telling their stories basically in quantitative terms so that they can start to draw some conclusions, because you can't wait. I mean, Brad Harris from Full Spectrum Survival said the official warning will always come too late.
Yeah.
So this is a grassroots effort to kind of take the data to the people.
Yeah. Well, every morning I'm at the CIA reading room, and I check the CIA reading room for recently declassified FOIAs and the FBI vault. But I think that it's time to start mass hitting them with FOIAs on this. I already have a couple drafted that I'm going to be sending off, and anything.
Is that Freedom of Information Act FOIA?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And any terminology that you want added to the FOIA, email me over, and I'll add it to the FOIA to see if we pop any results. Now, I'm not going to hold my breath because it is the government, and the government's the one that has the information. But I have found some real gems, especially just in the last couple weeks. So it's why I go there every morning and I read at least 400 or 500 pages of something, just to see if I can extract anything that the public doesn't already know, they're not already talking about. And we found a couple. I was one of the first guys that found the Anthony Weiner, the document on him that said child porn production. That's something that people didn't hear of. The production. It was sexting, right? That's what everybody heard.
Yeah.
But in the FBI documents, it claims something else. So you can always extract or glean some information from their documents, because every once in a while, it's like hiding skeletons in the closet. You'll open the closet and a bone will come flying out and hit you in the forehead. Well, that's what's like going to those sites helps you do. I don't trust them, but there's information there to be had if people have at it. And, we're trying to build a team of people that are, we all take, Muckrock is another, spot to go to check out interesting information. They get all kinds of FOIAs, and they have teams of people that go through 300 pages themselves, or, and they have just open source, kind of have a community that go through all of these documents, and then you fill out what you find, and then if you find something that jumps out at you, you can upgrade that to a level. Well, we're doing the same kind of thing with a smaller group of people at RTR Truth Media, and wow, just the stuff that we come across it'll blow your mind. Anyway.
So you're going to the CIA. There's a website declassified documents.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the CIA reading room.
CIA reading room. Okay.
Yeah, and it's 2 months ago, for instance, from the 1940s, the Presidential's Daily Summary Report they were published. Excuse me. So to find documents that I found, we just published on rtrtruthmedia.com. It kind of shows that not only were the CIA letting the president know that most of the immigrants going into Israel were from Black Russia seaports, from the Black seaports coming out of Russia, but they were infested with communist subversive agents and paid mercenaries. And this was at a time where leaving the Soviet Union you could only do it with state permission, and B, where anti-Semitism was a death penalty offense. So none of these folks were in danger. So why were they mass flooding themselves into Palestine? That's not the need for legitimate, refugee status because you feel as though your life is in danger. It's certainly not that. And right on the president's desk. And this is why, by the way, most of his advisors, they were advising against it. Well, of course, now we hear this canard called anti-Semites. So they were just labeled a bunch of anti-Semites by modern, historians now. No. Now that I have the CIA briefing reports showing who was among these people that were flooding into Israel. Oh, by the way, you heard that the United States turned them away too. Now you know why. It had nothing to do with their religion. It had nothing to do with hating any kind of certain kind of people. We were in opposition to an ideology, and that ideology was Bolshevism. We didn't want that here. So I guess the second best bet was to let them go there. But then if you start looking at the money that was flowing in from the banks here in America, making all that happen over there, and you listen to the president's address where he gives this beautiful flowing story of how these two guys kind of talked him into recognizing the state over there, and it mentions nothing about American businesses and universities being in danger, coming under attack, mentions nothing about the Irgun or the terrorists that blew up the King David Hotel and tried pinning it on Egyptians. These were terrorists. These were not I don't care what religion a terrorist, I don't care what religion you go by. I don't care if you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish. I don't care. When you resort to killing other people by means of deception to try and pin it on somebody else, I've got a problem with you. I don't care what religion you are. I'm an equal opportunity criticizer. So, but when we're looking at these intelligence reports, it also makes me think about, what are we going to find about Lyme disease? What are we going to find about all these other things that they've lied to us about for so long? That's why every morning I'm there reading, because it may just be one document. It may be a little trove. I don't know, but I'm going to keep looking and keep requesting and keep sending FOIAs in, and we're going to just keep plugging at it. I have some really good, solid people, good, decent people like Brian Young from High Impact Flicks, Adam Green from No More News, and we're trying to build a network of people who have a love and a compassion for their fellow man and want to do things in whatever capacity that we can contribute to help our fellow man. And that's what we're about doing. And one of the reasons I was so excited when you reached out to me the first time, because you guys, same thing, man. If we all just network and we all come together and we all information share, that's what we're about doing. So I really appreciate you guys and your work, man.
So the core of your message here is don't trust government official sources, especially in near real time, to give you the real truth about a situation. Any other practical concepts from you for those who suspect they may be Lyme sufferers, even though their doctors haven't been indicating that to them? Well,
there are networks like you mentioned, the website
LymeDisease.org. Yeah,
LymeDisease.org I've had conversations with people that have that are members over there, and there are doctors now that they are treating people, and
Lyme literate.
They're Lyme literate, and they're really trying to help people. The tide's changing, it's turning, information is coming, and all I can say is, I know what's worked for me in the past. The antibiotics really ceased to work, so there's some things that I use now. I hesitate because I know an Amish farmer who's in prison for selling raw milk. You know what I mean? So this is what we need to do, is we need to stand up and face this behemoth and say no more. We need to advocate for these people that the FDA throws under the bus. We need to get behind county sheriffs who are willing to act as interposer. Let me give you a really good example of interposition. Sheriff Bradley Rogers, amazing guy. We just published not too long ago, republished a story that he was involved with, where an Amish farmer had the FDA coming down and wanting to inspect and wanting to intrude. They're really impeding and harassing this guy. And he picks up the phone and he calls the sheriff. And the sheriff comes down. They sit at his kitchen table over a cup of coffee, the way sheriffs used to come and talk to you, And he said, well, what's your problem? And he said, well, these guys keep coming around. They don't come around with a warrant. They're making threats. They're, doing all kinds of stuff. So he went back to his office and he picked up the phone or he shot off a letter to them. I'm sorry. And the letter basically said, look, if you're going to send anybody here, they will have a warrant signed by a judge, supported by probable cause. And there's one other condition, that you must come to my office before serving it. Wow. Well, then he heard back from the Justice Department, who was not quite too happy with the sheriff's demeanor. And the sheriff doubled down and he said, well, if you come out here in any other way, you guys are going to end up in my jail.
Wow.
And that was it. They dropped the whole matter and they went away. People do not understand the fundamental power. This is why I think the most important election in everybody's little area, and I'm not a big lover of government, right? I have issues with government in and of itself. I'm like a absolute limited, if any at all, but kind of that kind of right winger. But the most important elected position
is your sheriff, right?
In the entire world. And this is reported in more liberal press, especially by Rachel Madcow. He says, well, these guys think that the sheriff is the highest elected official in the country or in the land. No, he's the highest elected law enforcement official in your county, regardless of somebody who comes from outside of your county into your county. And by oversimplifying that, trying to state it like, well, the sheriff is like a king. No, sheriff's not a king. The people are the king. The sovereignty is with them. And they place this man in a position where he raises his hand and he takes an oath to swear, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, I have news for you guys. Washington, D.C. is a foreign state unto your state. So part of his oath is that he will act as interposer. It's a check and balance. It's the proper role of government, if there was one, was to act as a check and balance against each other. This was the whole concept of a free republic. Right. And now these bureaucrats and SES types, these bureaucrats, career bureaucrats with no accountability, think that they can, but they can't. This Sheriff Mack proved that a couple times. There was a case against the Clintons with gun control. He also stood up, the sheriff, and he said, we're not going to be having any of that federal gun control in my county. Mm-hmm. That's not going to happen. Right. And he sat there and he read, shall not be infringed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That doesn't give you guys anything, by the way. He looks back at his phone and he says, that's a restriction on government. And it's my job to make sure that I enforce that restriction. And that is the proper mentality of a sheriff. People need to find people like that and get them to stand up for them. Because if they did, there is a peaceful solution right there. That's the first step. The second step is when you have homeopathic medicine. I don't know. They call it alternative medicine. I think is retarded. That was the original medicine, right?
Right.
Then
exactly,
came Rockefeller medicine, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And all of these universities are big pharma and Rockefeller Foundation funded. They propagandize these people and they teach them that this is the way to do it. Mm-hmm. And they've gotten so far away from natural cures and natural remedies that it's almost impossible for people to experiment with things that, by the way, couldn't kill you if you ate a bushel of. Right. You know, cannabis is the perfect prime example of this. Cannabis cannot really kill you unless you actually choke on it and you lose your air. That's it. I mean, you can eat the stuff by the pound. It doesn't matter. It won't kill you. So what prevents me from somebody that has pain from planting a couple plants in my backyard? Or I hate to say this, this is something that, by the way, my uncle got popped for doing a long time ago. He took the rap for a doctor. This doctor that he rented an apartment in Haddonfield, New Jersey. This is a cool story. Anyway, this old doctor, this guy was ancient. I mean, the wind could come along and he might blow him to dust. But he was very old. He grew poppy, right? Because he had arthritis and he had pain, but he didn't want to take synthetic opioids.
Yeah, right.
He wanted to take it in his tea, or he would put a little bit in his honey, and he would use the honey in a certain way. He wanted to use it on an all-natural form, and use it naturally in more natural products that also made him healthy. Mm-hmm. And this guy, come to think of it, was really old, and he got around. He drove and he walked, and he looked every bit his age, but he had energy, and he had a lot of pain, but he would grow the police came and a little bit of the poppy, and he had some pot plants growing too. And my uncle took the rap for everything that was his. And so long story short, here's a doctor who he was so old that he could remember alternative medicine as maybe not being so alternative, right?
Right.
Those are the kind of guys they wished would die. The FDA and Big Pharma, they wish those guys would die, because half of the things that the FDA approves and half of the things that Big Pharma puts out is poison. Mm-hmm. I mean, we talk about an opioid epidemic. Yeah. How many people die of prescription painkillers?
Right.
Non-opioids, other
right.
ones.
That's right.
How many of these shooters are on MAOI inhibitors and psychotropic medication? Yeah. And we're talking about the gun being the problem?
Right.
No. People have become Tide Pod and Big Pharma eating nutcases, and this is it's changing culture, it's changing mentalities, it's changing people's physical, their biology, their chemistry.
That's right.
Anyway, I could go on for hours on that
because it's troubling, and I know where I was raised. There's the University of Minnesota. They actually had a homeopathy school, and I wonder who closed it down. I don't know, but there's this, for me, the suspicion would be, well, the drug companies started to take over. It was like also in St. Paul, GM, I think it was GM Motors. Anyway, came in. They took out all the wonderful little train cars, the electric things, and put streetcars. There was that was, and you'd only find out about
in the bus system.
Yeah, they put in the bus system because the car companies would benefit. So there is a lot of that corruption, I guess you would call it, and conflict of interest. So.
You remember our first conversation that we had based on the 14th Amendment? Well, look at Citizens United, right? We have mixed emotions on this, right? But that's only because we're looking at it through a modern lens. Now, right prior to the 14th Amendment being forced into law, there was called the Person Act, and they redefined person to also mean corporation.
Corporations, yes.
Okay, so when you read the 14th Amendment, understanding that corporations now have the rights of an individual because they are considered an individual. When you read the 14th Amendment now, and when that word person pops up, it gives a completely different perspective to what the majority of the uneducated public sees it. They think it was to give black people rights. Okay, well, why was the first whole bunch of times it was used by corporations to gain more power? Because corporations now have the rights of an individual. So this is part of the thing that the American public has been dumbed down out of knowing, and we have these huge corporations now that are just out of control. Well, I don't know. Anyway, that's basically my gist on that.
We've been talking with Tom Lacovara-Stewart, the founder of RTR Truth Media, about
a wealth of knowledge,
the controversial origins of modern Lyme disease, and we both promise to circle back when we see results one way or the other about the new formulations of copper that are being provided, as well as peptide therapy. And
there you go.
I hope it works.
Yes.
Pray for me. I don't know if you have a strong Christian audience out there. I'm a Christian myself.
Yes,
we have quite a few. Yeah. So
and tell us where they can view more of you.
Oh, well, you can go to my YouTube channels, RTR Truth Media. You can go to my BitChute. I have a BitChute, also RTR Truth Media. RTRTruthMedia.com. Resurrect the Republic radio show on the Republic Broadcasting Network. That's republicbroadcasting.org. Usually Monday through Friday. I'm on pretty late at night. We're probably going to do a time switch soon, but that's where you guys can find me, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and we'd like to have you guys come on the radio show too soon, I hope.
Okay,
that'd
be fun,
in January.
You're a wealth of information, so thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing all of the information you have. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, God bless you.
You too. Care. Bye-bye. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
They say the stock market crashed today.
Yeah, I heard that.
Sounds like people's retirement accounts and savings accounts are going to get bailed into the banks.
Yeah.
Looks like pension plans and Social Security are going to get suspended too.
I know.
Sure, I'm glad we decided to put our money into gold and silver instead.
Me too.
Get your first ounce of silver at spot price and free shipping on any order over $99 at sdbullion.com/RP. Hey, Reluctant Preppers. If you haven't heard, we've already started our monthly 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle thank you gift to one active Patreon subscriber each month, signed by your host, Dunagun and Kaiser. And you don't want to miss out on that.
Please help us grow by subscribing today at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.